pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Start with roll call. Kristen Shorey.
Here.
Haley Keiser.
Here.
Chris McLaughlin.
Here.
Stephanie Weller.
Here.
Debbie Wallace.
Here.
Shannon Knowles.
Here.
Grace Kelly.
Here.
David Benjamin.
Here.
Chair is here. Takes us to item 2, agenda adjustments.
I don't have it.
Item 3, approval of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of November 7, 2022 with one amendment. The spelling of Lindsay Reed's first name in section item 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bullet down. It's Lyndsee.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Item 4, proclamations and presentations. A, committee acknowledgements.
I'll begin. I just wanted to acknowledge the great performance of Hermon High School. They did up with Greece. I think that Ms. Robinson did a fantastic job with all of the students. I was able to attend the afternoon of that Saturday performance, and I thought it was great, and the turnout I heard was great all weekend. So congratulations. I look forward to some more performances.
It's exciting to see the winter sports kick off and have the first season where we're seeing the kids without masks. Pretty cool to go back to normal in that sense.
I just want to say thank you to the high school, Mr. Welsh, for getting the Writing Center back open. I remember having a presentation on that a number of years ago, and the opportunities for students to get help with all different sorts of writing, whether it's a job application or a paper that you have to write. I think that's an awesome thing to get it back open, and to have the opportunity to have it virtual as well as in person opens the opportunity that much more. So thank you.
I'll piggyback on that, Deb, because I wanted to mention, if anyone hasn't read the blog, that the Hermon Hawks blog, that a lot of the students in the sports journalism course are writing and submitting things to, you'll have to check it out on the website. It's really fun to see their writing and submissions.
I just wanted to mention.
Oh, you guys need a mic.
Yeah, it's on.
I just wanted to mention how Key Club did a walk for breast cancer, and we raised $610. And Key Club also put up the charity tree for the first time in 10 years, which is for any students that are in need of presents this holiday season. And Kiwanis will be doing the donations for those gifts. And Hawks for Change is doing a winter clothing drive. I just wanted to say that Student Council completed a Thanksgiving collection just before Thanksgiving break, and they donated to all 4 towns, Glenburn, Carmel, Levant, and Hermon. And Student Council is currently doing a collection for the Shaw House, and they're collecting items that they're going to donate. Student Council is hosting the annual community party on December 17th from 7:30 to 11:30 here at the high school. And NHS is doing a book drive.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to B, public comments. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. We're about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. While state law in Maine requires a public comment item on agendas of a full meeting of the
the school committee, we also believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues, and so we are pleased to have this as an agenda item. Having said that, please note that the committee is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion, and accordingly, please do not expect the committee to respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously. We want to have sufficient time to process and research your issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. At the outset, we ask the speakers to identify themselves with name and town of residence. I also want to point out that per our policy, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel or specific roles. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. The committee will now entertain public comments from the community members. Each individual speaker is allotted 3 minutes. And first up, we have Jalen McHugh-Sproul.
Is it on? How does it get turned on? It's on? Parents and citizens have advocated for over a year for you to protect the children here in our district. We've sent letters and emails, made calls, and had meetings to no avail. We have devoted energy, month after month, to petition you to hear the cry of the parents. You blatantly refuse. Many on this board even won't reply to an email. Why? That's disrespectful. In addition to these failures, you are allowing the superintendent to dominate and disrespect the parents, taxpayers, and elected leadership. There are 5 of you and over 5,000 voters in Hermon. We are watching and taking notes. Chairperson, you are disrespecting the constituents who elected you when you absolutely refuse to do the right thing. With this stated truth and your absolute disregard to fulfill your role, it's time for you and 3 others to give your resignation. If you care at all about the peace of our community, you will be part of the solution by resigning and allow someone qualified to do the job. Replace you. If not, just remember, there's only been 1 recall in Hermon's history, and that recall removed 3 people at once successfully. Perhaps the old saying is true. History does have a way of repeating itself. I suggest you all take note. Amen.
Thank you. Next up is Nicole Barnes.
Hello, I'm Nicole Barnes. I teach math in Hermon. I just wanted to bring some positive news to you guys tonight about our students. I am the coach of the math team at our middle school. We had 44 students participate in our first meet this year, which is quite a few more than we normally do. We had a very large 8th grade group this year. We compete in the large school division, so we're competing against some really big schools in our area. 10 of our students scored in the top 10 for their grade. Out of the 10, 6 of them scored in either first, second, or third place. We did have a 6th grader who won first place and a 6th grader who got second. And then 1 of our 6th grade teams got first place and 2 of our 8th grade teams got second and third place. So I just wanted to thank you guys for your support, along with Mr. Freeman of the math team at the middle school. It's a great opportunity for students and is a wonderful place for them to shine, and they obviously are because they're doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Danielle Haggard.
Good evening. Chairman Keith, my question is for you regarding the flow of the meeting today. I notice on the end there are 3 executive sessions. Will you be coming back to this room to vote on any motions and also to adjourn the meeting? Thank you.
Sean McCarty.
Sean McBride, Hamden. Mr. Chairman, the meeting held on November 7th provided the community insight into not only the ignorance of policy and law from your Vice Chair, Kristen Shorey, but the childish behavior of your elementary school teachers and some members of this crowd. For the record, Shorey's failed to protect the children of the district from transgender books, 63 made-up genders on display, and porn poem books like Milk and Honey provided by this very school. Melissa Huey, the Drummond Woodson lawyer that your superintendent is using to frivolously sue me, said you would ensure that my rights would not be violated. She stated the school department recognizes and supports the right to have and express opinions on matters of public concern, and it will take no steps to abridge this ability to exercise those rights. Last meeting, I started to talk about public concerns, and Shorey said, Sean, you can't identify people, and this is repetitive. As I played the audio of a teacher's own words from her public comment right from this very microphone, Shorey gabbled and said recess, cutting me off. Upon returning, she fully violated my First Amendment rights to free speech and redress of grievances by not allowing me to continue with my 3 minutes. Along with this ongoing frivolous lawsuit, it's your second attempt to deny my First Amendment rights. You may be aware that Federal District Judge Nancy Torrenson in McBride versus School Board RSU 22, in which we won, said the only thing a school chair can do is control place, time, and manner restrictions. She also wrote, it's hard to shake the sense that the school board is restricting speech because the board disagrees with Mr. McBride's opinions. She goes on to say, in order for a school board to justify a prohibition of a particular expression of opinion, it must be able to show action was caused by something more than a mere desire to avoid discomfort and unpleasantries of a viewpoint. I'm putting you now on notice. You and your vice chair will not infringe upon our rights of free speech. Any school-related issue, item, concern, regardless of specific employee, teacher, administrator, school board member, as long as it's school-related, cannot be infringed upon. That's the law. Your policies are repugnant to that law, and if you plan on later this evening revising your public comment policy, one would think you'd know these laws. Now, Kristen Shorey invalidated her own oath of office last meeting, which is alarming at best. It's also alarming what she had said.
That I don't want to be on the internet all the time?
She doesn't want to be on the effing internet all the time. That's some vice chair you have there. That is certainly not something that the students of Hermon should look to as a role model. So this will be all over the internet before I leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Haggard.
Michael Haggerty, Hermon. I do hope that members of the school committee have reevaluated and will discuss the proposed change to BED tonight and ultimately do not approve its second reading. Changing BED to further limit audience participation is just a knee-jerk reaction to recent public participation in the past few months. This recent public participation is just a blip in the decades of the school's past and just a blip in the decades or even centuries that this school has ahead of itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Takes us to item 5, personnel, any resignations.
We have 4 resignations in front of you. Julie Thayer, who's worked at the Hermon High School Resource Room here at Hermon High School, obviously, for the last decade. Jen Missouri, who's an 8th grade ELA teacher. Samantha Hubble, who was the PATS self-contained teacher. And Steve Howard, who's been a long time bus driver for about a decade for the district. Those 4 people have submitted their resignations, and I have accepted their resignations.
Okay, thank you. fee transfers.
So I am recommending and asking for approval to transfer Mr. John Huddle. We hired him last year, you hired him last year. I think he was initially hired as the ed tech in one of the high school resource rooms, and then you transferred him to the alternative ed program, where he is currently an educational technician. Prior to that, he worked at RSU 19 as a resource room teacher. Spent I think he's got 27 or 28 years of resource room teaching, and he doesn't want to stay retired or semi-retired in the ed tech role, and was very excited to learn about this position. And we interviewed him and feel like he would be a great fit here at the high school to take Ms. Thayer's spot. So I'm recommending the transfer of Mr. Hubble to that position here at the high school.
Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve the transfer of John Hubble from the HHS Alternative Ed Program as an ed tech to the HHS Resource Room teacher.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. See employment.
And then two people, we were able to find this would be a part-time food service assistant, Irene Frith, and she comes with a lot of experience in the food service industry, has over 20 years working at Northern Light, and obviously had worked in the nutrition program, and similar to Mr. Hubble, couldn't stay retired and was looking for a 3.5 to 4 hour a day job, and it just happened to work out really well for her schedule. And then Karen Tate. We still have bus driver positions, so I'll just say that right now. If you know a bus driver or know somebody that has a license to drive or wants to drive, we will train them and get them approved. But we were able to bring in Karen Tate last week. I'm really excited. She has 6 years, I believe. It's either 5 or 6 years driving over at RSU 63, which is the Holden district. And we really enjoyed my conversation with her. She was a Downeaster. We clicked on a couple of different items, and so just feel like she would be a good fit for our district, and strongly recommend both Irene and Karen.
I'll move to approve Mr. Grant's recommendation to employ Irene Frith as the Hermon Middle School part-time food service assistant.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Because it's middle school.
Right. I move to approve Mr. Grant's recommendation to employ Karen Tate, bus driver.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. D, co-extracurricular positions.
And those are for your information. As you can imagine, we're already just getting underway for the sports season there. And I think what I like to highlight in a couple of those hires is just you have some former Hermon graduates and alumni there, and always appreciate it when we can get alumni to come back, and it gets our kids excited about the programs. Especially when they see a former state champion who is their coach, and that's kind of a neat thing. So really excited about, obviously all of them, but when it's an alumni, it is a special thing when they want to work for you.
Great, thank you. Item 6, old business. A, excused absence of school committee members, and I believe it was just me last.
I move to approve Jesse's absence from the last school committee meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. B, policies A. I think take these one at a time. Start with the Hermon School Committee rules.
I move, whoops, switch the wrong buttons. I move to approve, this is a second reading, of BED with one amendment typo. That's in section 18 in red. In parentheses, it says policy BEDG. It should say BEDH. I think that was just a typo.
I'll second with that amendment.
Any discussion?
Yes. To be clear, you're removing the safeguard from the policy in section 5 where you're changing unanimous to majority. Is that true?
You're talking about section 5 where it states we have crossed out unanimous and put majority? Yes, we have changed the wording to majority.
And why are we changing that?
Because that's how we vote, is a majority.
It was my understanding, is it Robert's rules? Is that why we're changing it?
That's consistent with Robert's rules.
Because I had the same question.
Concern, yeah. I mean, that's the way the town also operates, is by a unanimous vote with agenda adjustment changes, so that no one is caught off guard, so the community can be informed ahead of time, and to ensure that the board is informed ahead of time if there's something that's voting on. I know I mentioned this last time, but I'm just bringing it up again.
Any other discussion?
Yes, on section 18, I would like to make a motion to amend the main motion to include BED, motion to amend the main motion to include public participation and public comment will be invited to new agenda items. I would like that to be added to that section.
What do you want us to change?
I want to add public comment will be allowed to new agenda items, in section 18.
Haley, do you mean you want to add another statement? I didn't, it's hard to hear when we're.
I know,
this
it
way,
is.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to,
Sure.
trying to understand.
So I'm making a motion to add to section 18, public comment will be invited prior to agenda items.
So instead of saying may also, you mean will be?
So they removed the whole section 18, and they have a lack of clarification in BEDH. It references over there that it will include, it makes it at the chair's discretion.
Is there a second on that motion?
I just want to be clear with what we're, because this is our time to do so. Public comment will be invited just prior, you want it to say, or are you trying to, you want to change on BEDH? I'm sorry. Right. So BEDH, if we want to change some, it's tricky because they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand, but if we wanted to look at just BED what are you proposing to change within that?
That in section 18, we add public comment will be invited prior to new agenda items. And I am a little confused, Jesse, because it's BED on here and it's BEDH, and we have two different policies, but they're not on the agenda that way. Am I wrong? This happened last time too. Okay.
There's two policies, there's two policies, BED and BEDH, two separate policies.
So one references the other.
Yes.
So the clarification on BEDH is limits public comment to new agenda items, so I'm trying to reference it on BED. In section 18, when you remove all of the clarification of public comment, I want to add that in.
Do we have a second?
On which motion?
On Ron Haley's amended motion.
If we're looking to just further clarify and say in section 18 that public comment, strike out may also, just saying will be invited just prior to board discussion of individual agenda items requiring board action. I'm sorry. There's my phone card.
I guess my concern is, so we're only those that are allowing board action. And currently, right now, if someone wanted to speak, they're allowed to have input. And this policy, what you've put forward is removing the person's ability to communicate about other items, only ones that require board action, which really aren't that many. So you want to force someone to use public comment to discuss whatever items they may have versus doing it in lockstep with the agenda, if need be. So I'm trying to keep the safeguard in there and ensure that public comment will be allowed to the agenda. Does that make sense?
We still need a motion. Sorry, a second on that. Okay. We're back on the main motion. Any other discussion on the main motion?
I'm sorry, Jesse, I want to go back. I will second the motion if it's public comment will be invited just prior to board discussion of individual agenda items requiring board action. I think that that's reasonable, it helps clarify it, so I will second it if that's what the motion was for, but I think it might have been slightly different. I mean, I think taking out the word may also and replacing it with will allows adequate ability for us to be able to hear from the public, because if anything, we're clarifying and allowing additional time, because I think it used to be, it was just public comments in the beginning. So the fact that we're clarifying now and saying you will be invited to speak prior to board action, I think, if anything, helps clarify it. And that's why we've struck out the bigger paragraph, to be able to say, hey, we will allow this now.
I agree, that's my interpretation.
Okay, so I think if we took out the word may also.
Will, okay.
Yeah, so instead of, it will say public comment will be invited instead of may, because may just, it's a gray area, I think. So I think adding that word will just really simplifies what we had before. It was too complex before. So if, I will second it. Because Because I think that that could help clarify that, hey, we will allow that.
Just a clarification on the motions, is that the amended motion that you had said? Just want to make sure the second is on the same amendment that you did.
Yes, I wrote BED section 18, public comment will be invited prior to agenda items.
Okay. So any discussion on the amendment?
Just make sure it includes my amendment of BEDH on the correction of
Instead of the
clerical. Oh, yeah, thank you.
So is she seconding that, or are we?
You
Just
amended,
clarify.
she seconded, so we're in discussion now on that.
For the proposed change of taken out may also with will and then BEDH instead of G.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, it takes us to BEDH.
I move to approve the second reading of BEDH.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I think we have to be consistent with the BEDH and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but where it says public comment may also, it should be will be invited just prior. We've got to have it consistent.
In the fourth paragraph?
Yes.
That's a motion, step, I'll second that.
And I like the clarification that we've put on the end for the opportunity for subcommittee meetings, because I think that that helps clarify some of the concerns that we have.
What section is that the change?
The one that I was proposing to have be consistent is the fourth down first page. Public comment will be invited just prior to committee discussion.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Yep.
Okay, motion carries.
I get clarification. Did you stay opposed? Yes. Okay.
Policy IKF.
I make a motion to accept policy IKF, graduation requirements for credit-based diploma, as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Section C, 2022-23 school committee goals. These are in your packet as presented last meeting. Hopefully you guys have all had an opportunity to look at these goals over the past month and change. If you guys are okay with these, I'd like a motion.
I do this motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just to clarify, so I did put forward some additional, I didn't get a reach out email from you, but I did hear from Kristen in reference to additional community goals from the committee goals towards including community. And you weren't willing to accept those at that time. Is that something that you can look at adopting or considering, or do you just want to move forward?
Yeah, it's not that I was unwilling to accept it, it was just not what was presented last time. So we can have the discussion now if you'd like, but this is what was reviewed for last month. So if any other amendments to these goals would like to be made, this is the time to do so.
Do you have copies with you?
I don't have copies, I have one that I can pass down.
I also had written a sixth one based on what you had described last time, that you wanted something around communication. So I'll just share that too while you're sharing that. Because of that determination last meeting, I added the committee will support the Hermon School Department with establishing consistent communication regarding committee meetings, agendas, and minutes, as well as school-wide events, occurrences, and celebrations.
Yeah, that's good.
You read that one more time, Kristen.
The committee will support the Hermon School Department with establishing consistent communication regarding committee meetings, agendas, and minutes, as well as school-wide events, occurrences, and celebrations. And I think, Kaylee, that some of the ones that you had, because you had shared this with me via email, were similar to what we had had in 2021 and 2022. And one of the part of the discussion that we had last time was making them more measurable. So, and also the areas that, because no one had presented any goals prior to the last meeting, I brought forth ideas and shared them with everyone in print around, well, two things. I think the measurability is really important for us to be able to check off, yes, these are the things that we're doing that match with these goals, but also I really think it's important to think about our role on this committee and our support to the school department. And that's why I included that in the draft goals.
So I certainly
Do you
support.
want to pass that?
I certainly support supporting the school, of course, but I also want to communicate that the community, elects us, and that we are also care about their feedback and what they have to say. And I think it's good to include that as part of our mission, or at least for me personally.
Do you feel that number 6 satisfies that, or what additional could we do as a bullet point?
So I actually do like number 6. I think communicating when meetings is very important, but I also think that getting back to people when they're speaking at school board meetings and they're coming and they're, having courage to speak, that we're following up with the questions that they have or concerns that they have, and that it's just not a voice that we just, say yep and then we go on. I think it's important for us to follow up and communicate and reply to emails and let them know they're being heard.
Kristen, I liked the sixth one you recommended. I think that captures a good communication goal for us.
Can you read it again? Sorry.
I think it's broad enough that it captures one overall.
Well, and just to think about the other areas that we talked about in the other 5, which were safety of school environment, development of facility plan, which is, we all talk about that a lot in our committee meeting regarding the size the town is growing and what is our plan. I think we hear from the administrators and teachers about meeting the needs of all students through the current programs, but expanding, such as the Alt Ed program that recently was added. We also talk about the high standards and state assessment. We hear a lot about the curriculum and input from those admins. So I think that we also, one of the things, and we see today that we have 4 resignations, but we continue to really want to support around retaining highly qualified and certified professionals to work here in this district. And then the communication one that I'll read again for you, Stephanie, is the committee will support the Hermon School Department with establishing consistent communication regarding committee meetings, agendas, and minutes, as well as school-wide events, occurrences, and celebrations. So I guess in our discussion, we kind of have to look at yours, Haley, whether you want to read them out loud too, and then are we going to compromise, or, that's what we're here to do today.
Can I say this?
Yeah, sure.
Because if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying is, say somebody comes with public comment, how do we ensure, and this is definitely measurable, that by the next meeting, whether we are doing, it would be best if we were doing it perhaps publicly on the agenda, a follow-up maybe to the public comment, or how do we ensure that somebody's following up with them, or the emails, is what I'm hearing you say. So if I send an email to Micah as a parent, how do I make sure that I get a response? Is that what you're saying, that we're acknowledging the emails within a time frame, replying back to people that have public comment?
Yeah.
I think it's something, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think it's something that definitely could be measurable, by saying if somebody comes, public comment, then a staff member will get back to them by the next board meeting. I think it's reasonable, just so that, again, we ensure that people know that they are heard.
I think if we're going to add that, it needs to be clear that many times it won't be the school committee, because we have to follow our complaints policy, which is lowest possible level first through. So just need to be clear that it could be a combination of people getting back.
Yep, as long as
to stay consistent with our other policies.
Agreed, but as long as somebody's owning it, whether it's Micah says, okay, I'm delegating this question to Brian or whoever it may be, just ensuring again that we're getting back to the people so that they know that they're just not coming and we're not hearing them.
I'll say, I noticed I was reading through all of the meeting minutes that were posted online from 2015 or so, and I noticed that it appeared as though when Jesse was on the board, I think it was around 2017, you guys did used to have a section where you would follow up with the community from issues, I think it was near the end of the meeting. So that's kind of just speaking to what Stephanie's saying, either option, but yeah, I feel like there's a lot of loose ends sometimes, and there's not good communication amongst the board and amongst administrators, and to the people. So I just want to improve that.
I would disagree and say that there are loose ends in respect to communication from the administrators. The administrators do a very good job of following up on information.
Yes.
I don't know if I can't speak for the board in communicating to people that contact them, but I think the administrative team, and certainly in meetings where issues or concerns are brought up, I can think of 2 public comments from last meeting that we asked the principals to address because they were at the building level, and that's what we do. I think it's important to remember, this isn't really a you goal. This is what I do on Tuesday morning when public comments are made, is going through and seeing what we have to go back and address, clear up, clean up, fix, take care of, provide clarity. But I don't see how the school committee is going to achieve this goal unless it were to pursue adding something onto its agenda at the end, like a 2000, you said 15? Somewhere in that range, right? Unless it were to pursue something like that. So
It does feel because of our policy on complaints and lowest possible level, it does feel more like an administrative practice or goal than a committee goal.
Sure.
But again, I'll go back to Kristen's, and this was one of our goals a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. We really wanted to prioritize advertising for our students, for our school, for our students, and this is captured. I know we're talking in the first section of this, Kristen, what you read is communication of agenda and time of school committee, but it also addresses communication of our shows, of our sports programs, dances. It's a general communication goal.
Yeah, and when I say occurrences, we all read in Brian's report about the presentation that was completed by Mrs. Bierstein and also an outside provider about internet safety and sexting and things that are really important for us as parents to know about what's happening, and then the vaping and how the sensors are working, and that did not have an outcome like this today. So why is that? So I think that it's really important when the administration and is really trying to support families with our children and those important mental health pieces and also guidance. That's why I said occurrences. So if there's a better word for it, open to suggestions. I was trying to come up with a synonym of, events that were happening, and I wish that more people took advantage of those kinds of opportunities that are here on a regular basis.
So I'll read the first goal, for instance, that I wrote. The committee will encourage, support, and respect community involvement with the Hermon School District. I think that's not measurable. I mean, that we will encourage and be open to their involvement. Policies will reflect that, the things that we do and we work on. I think it's important that we see the parents as part of the picture.
Could we add that statement to the end of the communication one? Because really, when we're supporting that communication, we could be, and I'm a visual person too, so like looking at your goal, but that piece that you just said, adding it on to the end of inviting.
Do we hand it back down to you?
Yeah. I should take a picture of it.
That's okay.
The first one?
The first one. So as well, I'm just gonna read the second part. Regarding committee meetings, agendas, and minutes, as well as school-wide events, occurrences, and celebrations, to invite and encourage, support, and respect community involvement.
Invite and encourage community involvement.
Well, or I could just say encourage, but I mean, that invites, encouragement means, to invite that. I mean, that's what we want. We want community involvement through our meetings and school-wide events, occurrences, and celebrations. I don't want us to have 12 goals, so I feel like we have to figure out a compromise between, and I'm willing to, possibly take out one of mine that maybe yours is in place of. I just don't want to have like double.
That's up to all of you.
I didn't hear you.
That's up to the board. I mean,
right. That's my suggestion.
The changes you made, so you say that's my suggestion, are you amending the motion, or?
Haley made a comment about it's really the board to decide how many we have, and I'm just suggesting that I don't think we need a list of 12.
Oh, right, yep.
But I don't know what the result is. I'm just trying to.
I'm hearing 7 that we're proposing potentially Kristen's, and then keep the one that Haley has separate, because then it's clear, it's there. My only thing is how we're gonna measure all of these.
But is that the only one that she wants, or these two? That's not.
I knew I should have copied a bunch.
It's okay.
And/or the committee will prioritize and value stakeholder involvement in education. And stakeholder is teachers, it's parents, it's everyone. So I'll start for you. The committee will prioritize and value stakeholder involvement in education.
Could we add that at all to the first one that's listed?
Sure.
Or 3. I wonder if there's a way to tag on some of what he was talking about to 3 and tie that into how we meet the needs of all students.
Expanded programs. Prioritize the value. Or increase the spark in education.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
Adding it to number 3?
Adding,
So it might say, the committee will support, I'm reading number 3. The committee will support the Hermon School Department to meet the needs of all students through current and expanded programs and through stakeholder involvement.
Seeking
yeah.
all.
I'm missing the verb there, but I think this fits on 3.
Yep.
And encouraging and soliciting and.
Yeah, encourage stakeholder involvement in education. Yep.
So meet the needs of all students through current and expanded programs and
Encourage.
by encouraging stakeholder involvement
In education. Yep.
in education.
That works.
And then keep number 6, Kristen, the one that you just brought tonight.
So just so that I'm, just to be clear, you're adding what Haley had proposed to number 3, is that what you just said?
Just adding the words "and by encouraging stakeholder involvement in education."
Okay, thank you.
To the end of 3.
Yep.
And then Kristen's number 6 around consistent communication.
Okay.
Is there anything else that Haley wanted to add?
I felt like there was a number 7.
If you were open to the first one being number 7, that would be a motion I would make.
Happy to get at 7 with that.
Yes.
Number 1.
Uh-huh.
What was the first?
The committee will encourage, support, and respect community involvement with the Hermon School Department.
And you see that as different than what we just did by adding on to 3, encouraging stakeholder involvement in education.
That feels similar.
Did it say community instead of stakeholder?
Encouraging community and stakeholder involvement. Might be redundant.
Yeah, no, I think,
So tag that on to 3.
I think I'm okay with what we put down on number 3.
Adding that to 3.
I think it's semi-redundant, I suppose. So we'll keep 3 as the amendment, encourage involvement in education. Stakeholder, yes. Thank you.
Don't worry, Julia. Email you.
Oh, yes.
We do need a motion on amendment.
The number 3 amendment.
The whole thing. 3 and 7.
3 and 6.
Yeah.
6, yeah.
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Takes us to the Pines Church lease. I believe last month you guys had a lengthy discussion on the Pines Church lease. Mike, if you want to just spend a minute, just in a brief.
So Pastor Joy presented and requested a year-long lease for Pines Church, which is currently located in the, Pastor, if I'm wrong, please excuse me, I believe it's not Spotlight Cinemas. It is Spotlight Cinemas up in Orono. Okay, thank you. And they're requesting 3 spaces here for to have services on Sunday, or excuse me, a service on Sunday. Currently is running 1 service. The auditorium, the 2 classrooms in the main wing there that we used to be the computer labs that are now converted into just chair space, and most likely the cafeteria. He shared a vision, obviously, with how they would like to impact the community and his heart for the community. It didn't hurt him that he is a Mainer from Guilford. Yep, I got that right too. And so obviously, he presented that to you, and that comes obviously through me. When we start talking about year-long leases, we have created a limited public forum. We lease to, we do short-term rentals to a variety of organizations, whether it's the Scouts, whether it's sports, baseball out on the fields. And so we talked about there would be a fee associated with that. I think you're looking at roughly, it is a flat fee, so the fee structure is governed by our policy. And so we're looking at, and you and I have to talk a little bit more about the amount of time that people would actually be occupying the space. But we're looking at roughly $700 to $800 a month. Could go all the way up to $900 to $1,000, but looking in that $750 range. And that's something that obviously brought to the board, because year-long leases, long-term leases, we've never done one before, but we had the request, so that would be your decision at this point.
What's the time frames, like time of day?
Yep, I believe it was Sunday, and his team was looking at a 7:30 roughly being in here to about 1:30 by the time 1 o'clock. But I believe service with his congregation was it 11 to noon or 10 to 11? 10 to 11. I have not been to one of Pastor Joy's services, so I'm not as familiar with the structure, but 10 to 11, so 1 hour. And that's how we kind of determined the fee structure with the actual time. And then there would be cleanup afterwards, which we were going to obviously charge them for as well, like we do our typical, anybody who comes in and uses the gym or whatever that might be. And that was on Sundays.
Will we have to pay a member of the staff during that time to be here with them?
No, they'll have to pay for it. Yeah. And it will be at the end of the, so when they're done, they can charge a spot cleaning fee.
And they will have the ability, and is this what Boy Scout, all the others have? Do they have like a key to be able to get into the school?
Yep. Some of it varies depending on if a scout, for example, a troop uses the building while we're here, like a Wednesday night, they don't get that type of access. But if it's a basketball AAU program, then they are given that type of access, and that would be stated in a lease agreement that we would have our attorneys draw up.
Do we ever do shorter term leases? For instance, 6 months?
We do block rental agreements. So, for example, it's not uncommon to have a request for a basketball. An organization will ask us to rent the gym for a block of time, X amount of Sundays for 4 months or 3 months. That's a very common thing for the school committee or for the superintendent to sign off on, are smaller rental blocks of time. Yeah.
I guess the only reason why I'm asking is how do we ensure, are there other leases already on Sunday that it could interfere with?
Yeah, I wouldn't bring it to you if there was already in place schedule of organization. So for example, one of the spaces we talked about was the gymnasium, and that's not something that we could accommodate. And so if it was for the gym, I would have said, unfortunately, I cannot bring that to the committee because there are so many other organizations that have already signed up to use the gym. Hermon Rec, who we would give top or first priority to because they're obviously affiliated with the town. AAU, who has been in here for many, many years through whether it's Black Bear North or there's a couple other organizations. So the space that they are using, will they be in here at the same time? Yes, but will they be conflicting for this space? No. And school does take priority, although we don't have obviously very many. We do have a theater play, and so Pastor Joanne knows that on those few Sundays where there is a school conflict, school has, and that would be put in the agreement, school would have priority to that particular space, and we would try to accommodate them obviously, but we would make sure that school has priority.
Yeah, I think that it wasn't so much the conflicting space, it was the number of parking spots that we have, because there was potential talk of 100 people in AAU basketball could fill up the back parking lot. So it was more, how do we accommodate that many people in the school at once? That's what I was wondering.
Yep. I think given the amount of people we have here, for a very popular rival game, maybe with Ellsworth, I don't think we would reach that capacity. I think, yes, maybe prime parking would be, fought after, and people would have to be in the nosebleed parking. But as far as fire code and things of that nature, I'm not at all worried. And if he gets to 1,000 people, we'll have to talk, which I hope we do.
Mr. Grant, is the goal here, is it around revenues? Is it around finding revenue sources in non-school hours?
For like why I would bring it to you?
Yes.
No.
Can you share with me what, I'm trying to actualize how that ties in with the goals that we've just established. I'm trying to think about what the leasing of space, how that translates to the goals of our committee.
I think, and again, this is for the committee to discuss, I think that I think I shared this, but if I didn't, I apologize. When I met with the pastor, we met twice, maybe 3 times, at least twice, and talked about his vision for the community. And I've had Pastor Taylor from Hermon Baptist come by. I've had another pastor from Bangor stop by and just say, if there's anything that we can do for your school or community, we want to be there to help your community build relationships. And for me, when I entertained Pastor Boyd's proposition, he lives in Hermon, he has a passion for Hermon, he has kids that go to this school, and they want to be an integral part of this community. And so the fees is just that's what we have to do. We don't just give the space, there's wear and tear. So the fee structure is flat, it's for everyone. For me, I brought it to you because I think it would, they honestly are seeking a space that's local, closer to his own home, and they want to establish a church in this community. And obviously, as he said, building is expensive, buying is expensive, and so they're looking for a public place that they can have that while they get established and try to establish in this community. So, I don't know, Chris, I don't know if I fully answered your question or not, but revenue is not my intent, it's just what we have to charge.
And I think you mentioned last time, Mike, that like snow removal and insurance and all that is separate from us.
Yes, so they have to provide liability insurance certificates because just like any organization, we require that there's a certain amount of insurance that every nonprofit or not-for-profit has to provide. In addition, snow removal is something that if they have, we do snow removal, and that's just part, it's not tied to any of those organizations. We just remove the snow when it's time to remove the snow. And so hopefully that doesn't conflict, but if they can't get up here and we haven't had it done at that point, that's just on them, right? That's not something that they're paying us for, because we already do it.
For me, it's just the amount of people that will be in the building. Is it possible to do 6 months?
The committee can do just because there's a request, the committee can say, we'd like to try this for 6 months, or we'd like to do a month to month, and we want the superintendent to follow up and make sure it's being cleaned. The committee can determine the length. The request is just what the request was, and I'm sure for them it's that knowing that the rug's not going to get pulled out, but the committee can do what it would like as far as a time frame.
Steph, I like that idea for that reason and another. I don't recall, while I've been on the board, us having a year term before, and my biggest concern is walking up an area for a full year. We don't know exactly how it's going to impact, especially the auditorium, shows, show prep, concerts, concert prep, and use from our students of the other classrooms. So we don't know what we don't know. I think 6 months is a better test run, so to speak, to make sure it's not impacting the kids. And our priority is making sure that this facility is open for our kids first and foremost. So I like the idea of a 6 month.
Should you communicate with him and see if that, I didn't see any memorandum of understanding come through from Mr. Grant and Mr. Shoya, so I don't know if that's already been facilitated and clarified, or is that Mr. Grant?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Keisha, can you repeat that?
I didn't see any memorandum of understanding. Has there been something that you guys have worked out that, I haven't read it, so is there something, there's no, so should we ask Mr. Joy if that's something that is an option? Because 6 months seems like, I can understand if I'm renting something, you need to plan for that. I'm sure he'd be very flexible as far as if a school had a priority. I'm sure the church would work together to rearrange their, would you like to include him in that conversation, those questions, or?
I'm just trying to understand what you're asking me right now, because you use the term memorandum of understanding, so
Yeah.
We have no legal contract. If you were to approve any amount of time, you would be given a legal contract. Mr. Keith would sign that legal contract, right? We would become the landlords of that relationship.
Right.
The way our attorneys have phrased it to me, the school committee can approve any amount of time, a 6 month, like a block, a year, or if the school committee would like, they can go to a month to month. I do not know if a 6 month would work for Pastor. That I do not know. I have not asked him that question.
I guess I'm asking, can we ask those questions of him?
I think we could make a decision now on time frame and arm Mr. Grant with that information, that guidance, and then subsequently he can have that discussion.
Did you have something to add?
I just had a quick question. So if this lease or another similar one went through and the promoting and advertising of it, Times Church would have to use the high school's address, correct?
Yes, for their, if they put out a flyer and this is where our church is, yes. Yep.
Do you think that would lead to any confusion or conflict in the community?
That's a good question. So one of the things that we would have in our lease agreement would be, we do not promote and or support they are an exclusive organization unto themselves that are renting it, and we would have language that would reflect as such. It does not necessarily mean that the school committee and or the school endorse the church. And I think it's very interesting because I was reached out to a reporter today about how this doesn't happen very often in Maine, but I think it's important to remember that just because it doesn't happen a lot doesn't mean we haven't already created what's called a limited public forum, and we do allow our space to be rented by other organizations who, that doesn't mean we endorse or believe in the things that they do or stand for. So I think you're asking a great question, and that would be something that we would put in our agreement, in our lease agreement, saying we are letting them use the space just like we would let any other organization use the space, and it doesn't mean that we agree with their stances or, their philosophy or their missions or all of those pieces. So, did I answer your question?
Back on ensuring that the students' need our first priority, have you run this past Mr. Walsh, and did he give you a recommendation on conflicts or his interpretation of this?
We did talk about it. Mr. Walsh, I'm not going to speak for you because I believe we did have some dates that would be a conflict, and they were almost exclusively the show choir and like what we just had last month.
Keith, if you're asking me, I said no. So if you want to know where I stand on it, I don't know if that's what you're asking or not.
Yeah, Mr. Walsh, you might just come up to the podium.
No. Yep, no problem. You guys hear me okay? Yep, so when the original request was made, we have a staffing issue. I think you all know that when it comes to custodial, cleaning, maintenance, etc. So that was the first area of concern I had. Could we actually get this building clean on Sundays? Probably not. We don't have the overtime, we don't have the people. Then the second issue I had, and I still have, but again, this is just my opinion, we've never had a long-term lease, at least during my 21 years here. And I think there's a number of reasons we don't do that. There's a lot of variables we just don't know. No question, our students should come first. Our program should come first. We also don't know or have a sense of how this will be promoted, to Eva's question. If you put Hermon High School's name with a church or another organization with different beliefs than the school has, I see that as problematic. But again, that's where I sit and that's where I stand. Doesn't mean this organization won't do a great job, doesn't mean they won't support, hopefully, our mission as well. I just don't know. There's too many variables with that. And again, we have never done that. What I would not want is for students to feel like a group or organization that we are renting to, their vision or their mission is now ours. And there's a blurred line when it comes to that. So I have nothing against this church, this reverend, or anything. We've just never said yes to something like this. So probably why it's in your hands, because you guys get to make that decision. I'm looking at the facility and some other variables, so that's where I come from.
Can you talk more, if you don't mind, just about the staffing?
Yeah, we have a difficult time when we have a dance on a Saturday, or we have a ball game, to get custodial support and custodial coverage. I have a concern with that on a Sunday, but again, if there's a plan for that, I don't know what that plan is, but if it doesn't fall on us to cover, then I don't think it'll be an issue. But anyone who comes in here and cleans, anyone who in here works for the school, obviously has to be fingerprinted, background check, all those pieces, and maybe that would be in a lease. Again, I haven't seen one of these. We've never done this. So there's a lot of unknown variables that I'm not sure about.
I just want to be clear that there is no establishment violation. So I understand what Mr. Walsh is saying, but you got the advice from our attorneys today that there is no establishment violation. The committee's not violating the clause by allowing the church to use the space per policy, and that's from Drummond and Woodson. So I just want to emphasize that there is no establishment clause violation per policy if we allow the church to use. And I think it's also important to recognize that we have to make sure that we are consistent in the way we apply our practice to other organizations. And we have continually opened our doors and created a mid-public forum for other organizations to come in and use this space. And so that's something that, unless you are willing to close those other things down, I think you have to take a serious look. Now again, the term and the length, I think, is all very good questions, but you've obviously seen the recommendations, or you've seen the opinions from our attorneys, and so I think you need to take those into consideration as well.
I do. Mr. Walsh, while you're there, I'm just curious if you've heard from students since last month and
what some of the student feedback has been confidentially.
So since you brought, I was not going to bring that up, but I will. I've had a number of students who have come down and asked the question, why would we have that church in? What do you know about that church? Are they going to use Hermon High School's name? What if we disagree with their mission, et cetera, et cetera? This is not illegal, and to Mr. Grant's point, I know it's not. It's that perception piece. And that's where we get that blurred line of, is Hermon High School supposed, because again, I'm sure you can put language or craft language, and you should be careful with the lease and what you put in there. But if Hermon High School's name is tied to it, it then becomes this blur, especially for high school students, of, is this a school-sponsored event? Is this a school program? And so if the name's tied to it, it becomes an issue. And they've had questions that I haven't said yes or no to them. I said it's in the hands of the board where it probably should be.
And conversely, have you had students come to you and say, this is a great idea, let's do this?
I have not, but that's not typical.
So to that being said about them advertising for the school, I can't ever foresee a church combining those two thoughts together. They're their own entity, just using the facility. It's nothing more than that, just the same way that we let political people rent, the gymnasium, and they put out information with Hermon's auditorium and all of that. So obviously they're not going to solicit in the school or post things like that. That goes against our policy, and I'm sure they would abide by that respectfully. So I don't see how them using an address for people to find it has anything to do with an affiliation of the school, just more than a building.
I don't disagree if they use 2415. Not at all.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you don't want them to say Hermon School. You don't want them to associate.
I don't want it looking like Hermon High School is sponsoring a church, okay, or Hermon High School is sponsoring. That's where, again, this is where the blur comes in. So, but again, that's up to you guys, for sure. Yep, you're welcome.
Any other discussion? Motions?
For me, it's just, it's the number of people that are now going to be into the school. The other organizations, and I guess I have the question of what other organizations do we already have leases with? For instance, our students play basketball, our students participate in some of these other events. So I'm curious, what other lease agreements do we have?
We rent to Blackberry North, Hermon Rec, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and I would have to go and look. I'm sure, Jody, do you know any more off the top of your head? There are some other organizations. There's a baseball organization that uses the field outside in the springtime/summer. So those are some of the organizations that we rent to.
So again, it sounded like the church service was a very short period of time on a Sunday. It wasn't like it was short, it was 1 hour service.
Yes, I believe he said 10 to 11, or verified 10 to 11.
You mean specifically for that many people coming for the 10?
Yeah, when she's saying parking and thinking the turnover time, they're not going to be there for 6 hours in the parking lot. I think personally, if I were renting a place and moving and getting out of the lease, I would want a year, because you want time to have a chance to find another location if it's not working out. 6 months seems like a lot to facilitate and move and coordinate, especially when they're used to being 28, 30 miles away. That seems like
Are you making a motion?
I am discussing. Is there a motion for 6 months? Because I didn't hear that motion. Okay.
Nope.
So I guess I'm just chiming in on the 6 month statement. That seems like a short period of time for them to get established here before we rip, something away from them. I think this is unfair.
I make a motion to move forward with a 6 month lease for the Pines Church.
Any seconds? Okay, that motion fails.
So if I understood Mr. Walsh correctly, he said there has never been a lease like this that went through before, but has there been any requests for lease in the past at Hermon High School that were denied?
Not that I can recall.
You know, I've only been in this capacity for 8 months and 11 days, and but who's counting? I don't know if there's ever been a request for a year-long lease. Historically, I didn't bring, I probably should have looked that up or could have consulted with Mr. Chassie and Mr. Gagne and Mrs. Durham, but I did not do so.
I make a motion for a month-to-month lease. I think that we really have to factor in what Mr. Walsh is saying. It has nothing to do with the organization for me. It's more the amount of people that are going to be coming into our schools with the cleaning. If we already have a shortage, we don't know how many people could end up coming. Hundreds could end up coming.
Can Mr. Joyce speak to what the cleanup and what that looks like for his experience using the cinema? I mean, I'm not sure what type of mess a church makes. I mean, they go to the bathroom and they're not going to be here that long.
It's not the church, it's any sort of organization that could come in here. Say 15 of them all of a sudden have the stomach bug at once. Who's cleaning all that up? You know, if we already have a shortage of custodians, I just have a concern with allowing that many people in and out of the building. And quite frankly, I'd suggest that we look at the other organizations that are renting the space and making sure that we're adequately getting paid also. It's not, to me, about what type of organization at all. It's the number of people, and I've always questioned too, why is AAU basketball here? How much are we getting for that? Are we getting enough? So really, for me, it's evaluating all of them, to be honest.
Am I right saying that actually if it's a short-term lease, like if it was month to month, we wouldn't need board approval?
We gotta have a second on Steph's motion.
On 1 second,
I'll second that. Any discussion? I'll just add, I'll jump in to Mr. Walsh's point. My concerns are around staffing and, like I said before, prioritizing the students first and their activities. We got show prep, band prep, that type of stuff, making sure they have this first and foremost.
I'm just speaking at the Constitution and limiting someone's right to rent a building and utilize it for church or worship. I have concerns about the legalities of not permitting someone to do that. Because month to month, like she said, wouldn't need board approval, and they're an established church who needs a facility with stability. You can't just uproot 100 people and move them around on a Sunday easily. That's inconsistent with the request.
Any other discussion? All right, we're going to take a motion on the month-to-month lease. A vote on the month-to-month.
Well, that's unclear for me, Jesse. So we're not voting on the approval. So it's my understanding we're here to vote on a year lease, which was what he originally said. So now you want to change the whole to month to month?
The motion was a month-to-month.
My motion died.
No, I mean, last time when he presented, it was for a year lease. So we're disregarding that vote, so you're changing the vote.
We haven't had a motion.
I don't think we had a vote. Again, I wasn't here, but I don't think we voted on, you guys voted on that.
We did not have a motion.
Right.
It was just a presentation.
So I'm just trying to clarify. So he brought forward a year lease and now you're changing it to make it month to month.
You requested a year. It's the school committee's priority to deny it and or say, again, month to month, 6 month, that time frame is at your discretion to decide.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion carries.
Don't you have to ask why he's opposed or no? When we vote no, you don't have to say why, or only abstentions. Just
Only
clarify.
abstentions. Okay. E, move to approve bid for high school replacement boiler.
You have the 4 bids in your packet for a boiler replacement, looking to execute that sometime in April. That was approved via the SIPS project. When I say approved, meaning the budget, we set, money was approved and set aside for that. So those 4 bids are in your packet. Those have been confirmed. There is some hesitation regarding the manufacturer price may change a little bit, and by little, I don't know if that's a few percentile or several thousand, but we would like to order that obviously as soon as possible so that we can get that in place for an April, roughly an April transition date.
So when you say they've been confirmed, because these are not in compliance, these are the same bids you put forward last month that I brought up.
Can you clarify what you mean by they're not in compliance?
The bids expired months ago, back in August, so you just said they were confirmed, so are you saying that's verbally confirmed?
Yes.
And there's no specs on these boilers. So the quotes are very vague, like it says, it made the one that's within the limit of your budget.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Well, yeah, I was kind of pausing as I could read it for you. The one that's within the limit of your budget, it says price fluctuation and prices are based on time of PO. So this price may not even be close to accurate given that this was back in August.
Those bids were confirmed. The only change will be the manufacturer's change in price, not the contractor installation.
So what I'm saying is you're asking us to vote on something that may not even be close to accurate because we don't know the cost of.
I need your approval to replace a boiler here before the price becomes astronomical, and we believe that somewhere in a few percentage points of 98,000 or 157,000 or 139,000 or
I'm still unclear how
82,000.
how did we get bids without a design?
It's a replacement. You don't need a design for a replacement.
For the laws that I've been sharing with you, there's regulations on it.
I believe that your interpretation of that law is inaccurate, as does our attorney, as does several other superintendents that I talked to. You don't need a sketch for a replacement, and the boilers were already identified by a firm when we had our capital improvement plan drawn up in 2019.
Can I get a motion so we can get into discussion?
I think that's what I was going to clarify. I'm not sure what the motion is.
We're looking to make a decision on these, who we want to go with for these 3 bids.
I move to approve the bid for the high school replacement boiler within the budget put forth.
Of 98,000 through SMC.
98,000.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Crystal. And Steph, you're seconding that? Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, so I know next to nothing about boiler replacement. So I'm assuming that these 3 bids is the exact same scope of work. One just happens to be twice as much as the other in terms of price,
Yes,
but the scope is the same.
correct.
Okay. If that's the case, then it seems to make sense that the 98,000 bid is the bid to move forward, that the work is going to be the exact same.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm just looking over again your policy DJ where it talks about the competitive bidding process and how things that are over $10,000, it's practical and cost effective to specify materials and services. And so the $98,000 budget bid doesn't even specify very vaguely what they're doing, and then no changes to your control systems are included. Will we need something to our control systems? I mean, you won't know that without a proper design.
Again, I don't know if you are a boiler expert. It sounds like I'm in the same boat as Mr. McLaughlin. I believe that SMC has certainly the lowest bid per my conversations with Mr. Davis, that this company who's done some cell replacement at the middle school for us has the best bid and will provide the best product at the most affordable cost.
We won't know that because there's no clarification on what's included.
They are providing a Will McLean WMH-1188S boiler, free for work in the piping, breaching. I'm not sure what else you want besides that, but that's what they're providing.
Yeah, it's in the bold underlined part.
So the motion was the motion that was seconded to approve just this bid?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Motion carries. All right, takes us to F, move to approve the Hermon Sports Complex naming for the gift agreement with the town of Hermon. I need a motion.
I move to approve the Hermon Sports Complex naming per the gift agreement with the town of Hermon.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, if I could just add,
Name and...
Steve Thomas, I'm the chair of the Athletic Complex Committee. I spoke with Mr. Partle today, and he inquired if the school committee would consider amending the agreement that was presented to you at the last committee meeting to allow him or his family to basically get an additional 5-year, extension after the proposed 15-year term at a cost of $100,000. And so he just wants to have that option at the end of the 15-year period. The way that the agreement is set up right now is the Partle family would have the right of first refusal, but at this point they would like to establish, that cost structure right now. And so I don't know if you would want to consider that as part of what you're voting on tonight, or if we'd have to bring that back at a later date as an amendment to this agreement.
Not to put you on the spot, Mr. Thomas, but do you have a recommendation as the chair?
I think it's reasonable. I think the Partle family has been very, very generous. I think with this agreement, I think Mr. Partle is going to be bringing additional donations to the town and the complex. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
So I've got the agreement from last month here. So does that mean that the naming, what's in the agreement now is the naming shall remain in effect for 15 years? Is the recommendation to move that to 20 years?
No, right now it would be 15 years, and prior to the end of the last year, I believe it's 6 months. The way it's set up right now is the Partle family would have the option to negotiate a new term, but that new term is not defined. And so Mr. Pardo today asked if we could define that, so at the end of the 15-year period, if they want, they would have almost an automatic 5-year extension for $100,000.
100,000.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Thomas? Thank you.
Actually, just one more bit of information. I think everyone's curious about when we're going to be starting the project. With the approval of the turf, there was additional drainage that was required, and we recently got the specifications on what is necessary underneath the turf. That information was provided to Plymouth Engineering. They're updating the drawings. They're going to load that into the CAD system this week, and we expect to get the official start date next week. We are hoping, based on what we're hearing so far, that the project could start the first week of January.
Excellent. Okay, great. Anything else? So we could decide based on Mr. Thomas's comments, we could amend if you guys felt like doing that.
So who owns this contract? Is this the town or is this school? The way it's written now that was presented last month.
The town owns the contract, but per our policy, since it is on school grounds, that we believe it's the school committee's responsibility to endorse and ultimately approve a naming.
Yeah, so I'm thinking more about the amendment. That request then goes to the town to alter the contract for that next 5 years after the 15.
So that was already, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Thomas, but that was already in the contract. The first round was the right of refusal, and now it's actually defined.
Correct.
Correct. So if you did already approve that or took that into consideration in the first reading, now it's just defined to 6 months prior, $100,000 and an additional 5 years.
So we're approving that for the town to then take into consideration to modify the agreement.
No, I believe that you are considering, correct me if I'm wrong, considering accepting that as the second reading and approving that contract, naming the 15, and then agreeing to in 14 years and 6 months, approaching the Paul family with that agreement of 100,000 and 5 more years.
Got it.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Kristen and then Chris. Any discussion? I'll add, I like the clarity at the end of this that Mr. Thomas brought forward. I know I wasn't here last time, but the Pauls have been extremely generous, not just through monetary donations over the years, but through blood and sweat too here at the high school. And so a huge thank you to them. Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Okay, that takes us to item 7, new business A, policies. Move to approve the first reading of policies IJJ, instructional and library material selection.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Just for clarity, as written?
As written.
And then you second that? Okay, any discussion? Yes, Haley.
I found a spot where it still says the board, and I think that should be changed to committee.
Where is that?
It's under objectives of
You're right.
selection.
It jumped out. It jumped out at me as soon as you said that.
And then on the following page, page 5, under challenge materials, it says, despite the care taken to select materials for student and teacher use, I believe teacher should be changed to faculty.
see that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you tell us where that was again?
Page 5, under challenge materials, it says, despite the care taken to select materials for student and teacher use, and I suggest changing teacher to faculty.
I think sometimes when it prints, where depending where you put it, it's not always the same page.
Part of the process of being.
Are we open to discussion now, or are we, yeah?
Yeah, we'll discuss.
So this policy's gone back and forth, and I've put forward, as well as other community members, options to define content standards. I have read through this, and I don't see any addition to anything that was put forward from policy committee and or through emails. Is there content standards defined in this policy?
No, not specifically.
Is that something that we could include? Is this the second reading or first?
First.
I brought forward, again, the thing that probably was sent in your email as well, content definitions and standards that I believe I'm hearing the feedback that the community and I think teachers would benefit from having something that they know so everyone's on the same page what that content standard looks like and defines, and narrow that down from the long one that I gave you.
And as I stated in the policy committee this week and after the policy committee, that both Deb and I and Mr. Grant heard from the faculty, both administrative and teachers, as well as from the community members that were here that day, those that have written in, other parents that have other viewpoints than the group of people who came to the meeting that day. And at this point, this is what we bring forth without the content standards as a compromise of hearing from three groups of people.
So the compromise is where, because I don't see the compromise when there's no content standard added. I only hear one group represented.
The compromise is in the parental authority section.
Where?
In both of the red parts that are underlined that were amended, and then also a statement was added.
So again, when a parent opts in or out, that the child can still see the material that's available in the library. It doesn't prevent them, it may prevent them from checking it out, but it doesn't prevent them from seeing inappropriate material while in the classroom or in the library. So if there's no standard there, they can see inappropriate content without us ever knowing about it.
I've heard your perspective, and this is my stance at this time, and I'm proposing this to the committee. We do also notice in the policy that the subcommittees are not decision makers, they are advisory people. So this is us advising the compromise from all of the three different groups of people that I've met with and heard from.
Can I just go back to Ava's? Any concerns with the change on teacher to faculty?
I think it should say staff.
Which I think correlates with the first section.
And it lines up with, we have school staff a little later in that paragraph. I think staff fits the intent there.
I agree with that, Mr. Grant. I just didn't want it to it sounded limited to teachers.
So we just need a motion and amendment to grant those two, changing board to committee and then changing teacher to staff.
I'd modify the motion then to include those two edits.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment?
Amendment only?
Yes.
Or I mean, I think we've heard many times from the parents that are concerned about the content of some of the books. And so I want to hear from Mr. Walsh. We, as a school, do not grade them, but I looked into it this afternoon with him and I wanted to ask the question. We utilize a third party for the ratings of our books, and it's my understanding that a lot of the books have an adult rating, and it starts to become hard to define that line. For instance, John Grisham books could be adult rated, is that correct?
So we use BroadArts, which is a third party. And when you go on to if anyone's gone onto the catalog, it is online. When you click on the catalog, if you were to put in A Time to Kill by John Grisham, or you would put in some Tom Clancy, Ken Follett, I'm going by what I like to read, but if you were to put those, or whoever wrote The Notebook, I don't know who that is, but Nicholas Sparks, okay. You're going to see that there are adult themed. And so there are, if you go on, and I put in a number of different titles to try it, they come back adult themed. That's a third party that is rating those. We the school don't. Obviously, I think that would be a train wreck if you told us to do it. But using a third party, I think that shows us where those are. And I think you're going to find there's a number of, you can go on and search all you want. You can see there's a number of books with adult themes for sure in our library.
But as a parent, I could request that I do not want my child to sign out any adult rating.
That's correct. That form that we created, the idea was you as a parent fill that out. It goes right into our database. When the child brings a book up, their name comes up on that database, and hopefully it's a text. There's two options on the form, email or text. Hopefully it's a message to the parent. Your child tried to take out In Search of Osama bin Laden. That's one of the books that popped up I was looking at. And so if you as the parent get the message and you say absolutely not, they don't take it out. Hopefully it's a conversation with you and your child at that point when they get home that, hey, you want to take this book out? Why do you want to take the book out? And if the parent wants them to, it's a message back to the desk. We have the librarian and then we have the ed tech saying, yep, I approve this book or I don't approve this book. And that way, in my mind, it falls on the parent. It opens hopefully a line of communication. And hopefully by the time a kid's 17 or 18, junior, senior year, I would think some options might change. At 18, obviously, we're going to hear seniors tell us they're adults, they can take out what they want. We'll probably still defer to the parents just like we do on dismissals and everything else. Hopefully it opens communication. And the reality is we obviously can try it, and if it doesn't work, I have a feeling we'll be back trying to come up with a better plan, but based on where we are, I think that could work. One of the things we're going to have to do is anytime a book comes up that is not rated by BroadArts, we won't check it out, and we'll have to look, see if we can get it, go back to them and find out where that lies. I see that as probably again, this is going to be a trial. As far as I'm concerned, we try and see what happens. I don't know how the K-8 libraries work, just how the high school library works. But I can't imagine they have adult themed books, so at least I hope they don't.
So again, it's not that it's just adult material, it's defining the content of the material. Some adult books are certainly appropriate. We're talking about defining sexually explicit content with the policy or those that have been put forward. And again, referencing Maine's Constitution, talking about giving instructions to representatives and the right to petition. Those voices that have come to you who are trying to have you hear their voice and to pay attention to defining those standards so that they aren't having sexually explicit material in school when parents don't know about it. Checking it, taking it off the shelf is one thing, and they're still being exposed to it. Parents can't protect from that. This is saying, does this have genitals and such exposed in the content? This would allow the school to have something measurable to protect their innocence from being exposed to that without their parents knowing about it.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure how to make this shorter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Danielle Haggerty, Hermon. I just wanted to speak to a couple of items with regards to the content discussion. One is I have heard people say, well, they should just get on their phones and they can access it that way. I won't deny that. Definitely a possibility for people who have been provided phones. I've also heard things, other comments within that lines. I do want to point out that I believe the school cannot even put soda in a vending machine, yet a 13-year-old could walk across the street and buy it from a local business. And there are restrictions on advertising within the school that can't take place. Again, they walk off this campus and the advertisement is everywhere. If somebody has a headache on school grounds, they have to have permission as a minor to receive Advil or Tylenol, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. Yet again, they could walk down the road to the drive down the road to the gas station and pick up Advil themselves and take it. So there definitely is a precedence for things being treated differently on a school grounds as opposed to non-school grounds. So I just wanted to speak to some of those comments that I have previously heard. With regards to the criteria, it feels to me as a parent who's been advocating for criteria that I hear what you say, Kristen. I really do appreciate you bringing up the criteria that I presented to you before in the meeting, and I thank you for advocating for me when I couldn't be there. I do want to acknowledge that, and I appreciate that the last section is being tweaked a little and added in. I do want to say that to me, it isn't a conversation of content or no content standard. I mean, that's what we boiled it down to. And it's not for me whether or not I trust the teachers and think they're experts in content. It really is about, can we try as a group to come together and have a discussion, grade level by grade level, so elementary, middle, and high school, what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, and come to an agreement about what it could say. For instance, I'm going to start at the easy one, the elementary school, and you had some great points, Kristen, in the meeting with regards to some very, and you're not the only one because actually I got feedback from others with regards to the language that was originally presented, and it was just a starting point. But some of the things that we're looking for, visual or visually implied depictions of sexual acts or simulations of such acts shouldn't be in the elementary school books. So I think that everybody could potentially sit down and agree with that statement. So I think it's about, can we sit down, maybe start at the elementary school, because I think that's where we probably have the most consensus, and can we come to agreements there, then the middle school. I'm sorry, I didn't know there was a 3-minute limit for this. My apologies.
You can finish.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think I'm beating a dead horse, but that's what I would love to see. I would love to sit down with teachers and have a conversation about, okay, what can we agree to? Can we get some standards in this policy that we all agree to? For me, that would be a compromise, and that would be a great way to start, and I'm definitely available to sit and talk to anybody who's interested. And I did reach out to teachers, but they wouldn't talk to me, so I tried to reach out to teachers and ask for their input, and they wouldn't engage in a conversation, so I did try.
I guess I'm unclear why we aren't adding it. Can you clarify why we are not?
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Can you clarify why we're not adding a content standard? What is the resistance to that?
I didn't hear what you said.
Can you clarify why you're unwilling to add a content standard to the sexual life, the sexual material?
I think the content, it would be really hard to narrow it down so that it would be manageable. Because like Kristen said in the meeting, looking at some of even the elementary books in the meeting when she was talking about those, some of the I can't remember the name of the book that she mentioned, but the middle child in the bathtub or whatever. So trying to find words to clearly identify the parameters for them to be manageable.
So with that, because that was a good point about the child in the bathtub or, little kid books. So that's why the standards that were brought forward and the amendments that I believe Danielle had emailed define very clearly sexual activities specified in anatomical areas. And I think if the teacher saw it, they'd be open to that. I think a lack of communication is confusing for them, and it seems, I don't know what the right word is, but I think if they saw that, they'd say, oh my goodness, of course I support that. And I'm unsure if they've been provided the material to reflect on, so it doesn't seem like it's an attack on the teacher, it's more, oh, of course we wouldn't want that. Well, okay, let's just define that so we're all on the same page.
This was disseminated to the teacher review committee and they rejected it.
The long one, I understand that since then there's been several that have been put forward, at least to Kristen and myself.
I'm sorry, can you say it one more time? I didn't catch the whole thing.
I'm saying that since the long one, I understand that's cumbersome, so since then we've clarified, very narrowed down what defines sexual content. I think if the teachers actually saw it, they would understand that. I'm sure they would be in agreement with it, or I would assume. I think it's fair to assume the majority of adults would not feel that it was appropriate for children to be seeing sexual acts and parts of the body.
Yes?
Can I just clarify that the document that Haley is referring to, I haven't disseminated outside of Haley. I was going to hand it to Kristen today. So Haley, sorry if I didn't clarify that, but they don't have the document that you're talking to. And what she's referring to is I watched the last meeting that took place for the policy committee, and I took all of the suggestions, comments, questions, and concerns that people had, and I made edits to the original document that I had provided, and I was going to hand it to her when I left today. So I'm sorry, Haley.
Okay. Thank you.
I think when we look at this policy, I hear loud and clear K through 8, there's certain things that quite frankly shouldn't be even on the table, whether or not they're there. To me, it was the high school library and some of the books there, but perhaps we further define for the elementary and the middle school those additional standards. Is that what I'm hearing for K through 8 in the middle school? I think there's such a huge gap between my child that's almost 18 and almost an adult versus kindergarten, where they don't have, well, maybe they do now.
But even if
a lot of them don't have access to those phones. Sorry.
The goal, though, Mr. Grant, would be that type of rating system we would use through all the schools, right? Not just the high school would have the same type of rating system.
The one that Mr. Walsh referenced?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, there would be no adult rated books other than in the high school, right? I just want to clarify that.
There are some things that are going to be adult rated at a middle school level. If you look at things like Hunger Games, where there's violence. And so adult rated doesn't just cross over or only live in sexual content, it lives in violence as well. So there very well could be things that are of a violent nature in a library at a middle school level.
Okay, so let me ask a question, because I hear a lot of the concern around the sexual content. Does that third-party grading system further enhance to talk about sexually explicit material?
No, I don't believe so. I think it just classifies as adult based upon either sexual content. Mr. Walsh, correct me if I'm wrong, sexual violence, probably language would fall into that category as well.
So again, that's the need for having a content standard in the policy so that we have a measurable expectation.
Keezer, can you tell me how you measure terminology that is implied? Like
Yeah,
when it
so-
says visual or visually implied?
Danielle, I don't know if you have extra copies by chance on hand. I'm not sure your resistance to this, Mr. Grant, because you were in support of this.
I don't know why you would assume that I have intentions that I'm resistant to it. I'm simply asking a question.
It's your tone.
It's my what?
Your tone when you're talking.
Oh, I'm just asking a question in as monotone voice as I can, and I'll try to be less monotone.
So to clarify, or actually, I'll just let him hand you it, you know. Second. Did you get a copy? Mr. Grant?
No, I did not.
I'm not speaking, I'm just letting you guys read.
I'm sorry.
I said I'm not going to speak because I wanted you guys to be able to read without.
Yes.
I just want to point out a couple of things.
Just name the town resident.
Oh, sorry, Regina Leonard, Hermon. Back when we had the book appeal, I heard Mr. Walsh and I heard Kristen actually make a motion that we would make the motion that the book would stay, but we needed to have a standard of rating system. And I have said this multiple times, an opt-out option does not work in the library. It only works if you're checking the book out. The book is still available for the child to take off the shelf and read in the library. The opt-out option for me as a parent works in a classroom setting with a curriculum. I use the example of when they have the sex education, I don't remember now, 5th grade maybe, and I have the option to opt out of that, or any other subjects. It's a totally, there's two situations here, classroom, library. And so what you're being asked to do is create a standard on sexual content and do it for each school, because yes, there's differences in each school. So adult rating only doesn't define sexual content. It is not complicated to define sexual content. The law clearly states that. So it's just a reminder, I'm speaking for myself and on behalf of all the people that have come to me. There are so many people scared to get up here and say what I'm saying. But we have asked you for a year. I messaged Kristen and Micah Grant a year ago. So this is the time to do it. Thank you.
Should this go back to policy committee?
Yeah.
I like the suggestions that are made here for elementary and middle. I definitely hear what people are saying about the high school. That one's trickier to define, but somehow how do we dig into and create a standard that we can all agree on to further define it? Because adult rating starts to eliminate a lot of books. There'd be no books in the library.
Right, exactly. Which is not the goal.
So I'm glad Mr. Walsh clarified that. I guess I didn't catch that before. That actually, I see that as a benefit because there are going to be parents out there who don't want their their kid in 6th grade reading, what was the example you used? Hunger Games. Right, so it will tag books like that. All the adults will tag books like that, and it won't stop them. It won't tell them forever they can't take it out, but it will notify the parent, and then it'll put it in the parent's hand to make the decision if their kid can take that out or not. Because, you know, I'm going to make it up, but I may be comfortable with my 6th grader reading that book, you may not be. Okay, but you may not be. And it's really going to vary parent to parent on how they want to allow it, what they want their kid to do.
Yeah, but and I know, like, if my high schoolers are going to the library, they're not looking at the books. Maybe they don't even know books are in the library. I mean, I'm kidding. But I hear what they're saying in the sense, The issue is, students get dismissed down to the libraries, should be in study hall. Where are these books that I've said I don't want my child to look at? How, that librarian can't prevent that. So it's tricky. I don't know if it's possible to have an adult section. And again, I know that that's a lot of books, but how do we reach that common ground? So if there is one, just be open to those different opportunities, you know. Somebody mentioned, well, maybe some could be in the guidance. Well, sure, but then when the category is that broad, the whole, half the library could end up being down there. But is there a possibility to have an adult section in the library? I don't know, I'm just asking is that a way to, hey, as a parent, I have the ability to opt out, and then there's an adult section in the library. Just an idea. If it's not possible, it's not possible, but it's just an idea.
I mean, this is our main role as a school board, is to clarify and write policy that operates our entire school. And I think that it takes, we don't have to rush this process. I know it's gone back to subcommittee a few times. I think the teachers were open to all of us communicating openly and having the feedback and more of a workshop style. I think it would be beneficial for both sides. I hate saying the word sides. I think we can find middle ground here.
We do have an amendment on the table still.
Remind me of what it was.
It was as proposed with the changes to change board to committee and change teacher to staff.
I think there's an opportunity to be able to clarify what's at the elementary and at the, can you say it, at the middle school. I think there's an opportunity to potentially not remove existing books, allow parents to have the ability to be able to opt out of all adult books and have, I don't know, potentially a section of those adult books somewhere in the library.
Again, though, it's not that it's adult, it's the content. That I couldn't read this book on Channel 5 News because the FCC would fine me. Why is my child allowed to sit in the library and read this without my knowing? I, as a parent, am trusting the school to put a policy in place that protects them when I can't be there. It's my job outside of the school to monitor their phone and everything else that they do. I'm saying when my child is not in my possession, I'm asking the school have a standard that is clear.
And by that, you mean on the criteria page, elementary and middle school.
I'm unsure why, and if a parent wants their child to have depictions of sexual acts at elementary level, that's something they can do at home or at a public library somewhere else, or order books elsewhere. I'm unsure why they need to be looking at those things in the library without their parents being aware. Or why anybody would think that that's appropriate, I'm unclear. So if there's feedback that can tell me why that's appropriate, I'm open to hearing that.
Can I make a motion to amend to include the elementary and middle school content?
We have an amendment already on the table first, so we have to.
And if that amendment passes, it goes back to the policy committee for it.
If that amendment passes, it's just the first reading that passes, then it will come back again to us for second reading.
It doesn't go to the policy committee. If it passes, it doesn't go back. That's what just happened with BED, which was, I was unclear. I thought it was going back to policy as well.
Well, I thought this was the first reading.
This is the first reading.
So when they take it to first reading, they didn't take it back to policy and go over BED with the amendments that I had made.
Well, no, we adjusted the word may.
Yeah, I thought,
Thank you, Stephanie.
I-
Right? Like, what else was there?
There were others, I just chose the one that was. There were others.
and I'm sorry, I guess I thought that after first reading, it goes back to the committee.
I thought that too.
Goes back to the full school committee, not to the policy committee.
The policy committee doesn't look at this again.
But this is our opportunity to suggest to add additional language if we wish. Okay. And in order to do that, you're saying that the initial motion with just that one change would have to be retracted?
We had an initial motion to accept as written, then we had an amendment to the motion to make those two changes, so we can't have another amendment to amendment.
Well, that was the students, and they're not here, so I'm sure they'd be open.
No, Chris.
No, Kristen and Chris.
Oh, for the board and the faculty?
Yeah.
Yeah, students suggested it, and then Kristen
Okay.
and Chris.
I stand corrected.
So is there any other discussion on that amendment? Okay. All those in favor?
I'm not even sure hold on, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So if you're voting in favor of the amendment without adding context, or is this going to be a second?
This is the amendment to add staff instead of teacher and change board to committee.
And that won't allow us, because if we vote that passes without allowing a change for this. So are you unwilling to retract your second and to go back to the main?
I'm voting on the original amendment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a vote. Clarity on what you clear on what we're voting? Everyone clear on what we're voting? No.
So to be clear, you are voting to not include content standards.
We're voting to accept this as written, except for those two changes discussed.
Well, I also agree with what they're saying. I'm also trying to do this, so it's a catch-22 here.
Okay.
Are you clear on, everyone clear on what we're voting for here?
Yes.
Okay. So all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that takes us to 8 reports, administrative reports.
Just want to highlight in my report that we plan on having an SRO. I mentioned it briefly, but we plan on having an SRO join us in January and have the opportunity, like I said, to meet with Mr. Boyd, Officer Boyd, and I just think he's going to be a great fit for our district. Has one thing I didn't write, he has experience as an SRO in the past over at Brewer. So again, just really, really excited to be moving in that direction, and congratulations to him. Looking forward to working with him.
Anything else for administrative reports?
No, I probably will think of something in a minute, but no, I don't believe so.
Yes. Sean McBride, Hamden. Mr. Chairman, I asked you to put the Freedom of Access Act on the public agenda. I think that was in Superintendent Grant's report. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to point out that, in my opinion, your district has already willfully withheld public information on at least 2 occasions and has broken Maine FOA law. You've also been the subject of a recent WVOM radio appearance by a Hermon resident and her concerns on the way your district has mishandled FOA and the obnoxious attempt to charge $27,000 for public information. Also, your superintendent, who I've requested to view his FOA certification, continues to call it the wrong name, making you and the department look somewhat ridiculous. Superintendent Micah Grant is also attempting to say that records with names of employees within the bargaining unit and communication between the bargaining unit, again, let's say the teachers union boss, and its members are not FOA worthy. Anything within the taxpayer-paid systems, text, IMs, even personal emails in a government capacity are all FOA-worthy documents. Withholding this is against the law, and you, Chairman Keith, are ultimately responsible for your employee, Micah Grant. Mr. Grant's very broad interpretation of this bargaining unit aspect has been denounced by the Maine Attorney General's office as a misuse of the FOA law. The only documents falling into this realm would be actual actual communications about contracts, not any other requested FOA information, such as, say, emails back and forth between members of the bargaining unit and other teachers regarding, let's say, myself or any other community members. So your job, Mr. Chairman, is to provide Superintendent Micah Grant direction as you're opening yourselves up to potential Superior Court violations within the Maine FOA law. So the fact that you're even contemplating extending his contract is simply alarming. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one thing to add to my report. I remember what it was. One of the things that the district remains diligent in doing, obviously, is responding to FOA requests. And as you saw from my report, they are extensive. They consume a tremendous amount of time. And one of the things that we are ever diligent to do is to protect confidentiality. I think one of the things that's challenging for people to understand is that they don't have the right to see certain types of documentation. So one of my responsibilities as the FOA, I would just call me the director, if you will, or the reviewer, is to carefully review all requests. And I use the example when I receive a request between two parties and X amount of emails. It takes an extensive amount of time to review all those emails, and that time unfortunately is being used to scan for confidentiality and protect those people and those students and the activities of the school, and not be used for other educational purposes. So it really is a disservice to the students when you have to spend that amount of time doing something. So the district remains diligent to protecting the confidentiality of its students and its employees, but also being transparent where it can be and providing that documentation when those requests come in. And one of the things that we always encourage people to do is give us a narrow scope so that it doesn't eat into that educational time for students. So we always encourage people to do that when they make requests that encompass thousands of emails.
So Mr. Grant, may I ask a question about that? Contracts are, whether it's plowing or whatever the contract is, are you considering that to be confidential information?
I'm sorry, what?
I'm not speaking of teacher contracts. I'm saying, are you considering contracts confidential information?
Contracts?
Contracts.
No.
So when I've asked for contracts and I have not been given them, is that because?
That's because your request isn't defined enough, or the FOA that you're submitting to the district doesn't make sense, or we don't have any documents responsive to that. But everything you've requested that we have control and in our custody, we have responded to.
Okay. So when I've been asking for a copy of the line item budget, is that something that the school has possession of, and is that considered confidential?
That goes out when we've completed the audit, and I've made that very clear.
What does an audit have to do with the budget, the current budget? Why would we have an audit? That's like backwards. Last year, right?
Yes, for last year, yes, that was your request.
I will clarify the request for you.
Yeah, please do, and I'd be more than happy to turn that over to our business manager and we'll get you an estimate of time.
Thank you.
All right, B, Facilities and Track Committee. I don't have anything else to add. Again, thank you, Mr. Thomas, for providing an update today. C, Finance Committee, we have not met on budget, but I think we're targeting the end of January.
Yep, just an update for timeline. What we do is we typically, I say we, that means business manager, myself, we meet with all the building principals, the directors, and we have completed all of those meetings. the goal is to be done before Christmas break. We just wrapped that up. So the next phase is to then have our first draft of the budget and bring that to Finance Committee and shooting for middle to end of January. I'd like to be a month earlier than last year. We started that process February 28th, I believe, and would like to be more late January to start that process this year.
Any indication of what preliminary numbers are showing?
As far as the tuition dollars, what we're looking to spend,
Well, I'm hoping the tuition rate has gone up.
we think that it's going to go up. Cautiously optimistic, yep.
Yep, okay.
Enrollment will be up, and we have, I think, last year it felt like we added quite a few staff, and I feel like it's a moderate add this year as far as adding staff to our increasing enrollment. So I think we are going to bring a very responsible budget request, but obviously we will work through all that, look at needs, look at wants, and really, work that to hopefully balance between tuition and enrollment and what the students need in the schools.
When will be the next time that you're meeting with the administrators to go over numbers?
1st of January.
1st of January.
Right when we come back from break.
Can Jesse and I be included in on that if we wish? Okay. And the only thing that I wanted to add back to administrative reports is I just want to make sure that we get testing results in our January packet, and I think that's probably maybe already indicated.
Yes, I did actually. We met as an administrative team today, and I asked them to prepare a report for the January meeting.
Take policy.
Our next policy committee meeting is Tuesday, January 3rd at 4:30.
Thank you. Tech.
I'm not sure when our next meeting is, but I want to, hopefully it's soon, because I want to make sure that we get that one-to-one and how those electronics are being used content-wise, I think is important, and I know we've done the survey, so could you talk a little bit about that?
The survey.
Yeah.
So there were two surveys. We did a survey of the faculty in the district, and we asked a variety of questions, ranged, and we solicited feedback from the tech committee in what some of those questions should be, and drafted a proposal, sent it out, solicited more feedback. We ultimately got results back from I think it was about 64% of the staff, 65% of the staff, and just talked about what the device preference was, operating system preference was, the importance of having a device in class, the importance of a device one-to-one, time spent, redirecting students who might be distracted by a device, use of how they were used for instructional purposes. So the survey was, we tried to make it broad, yet get to the crux of ultimately trying to find a one-to-one device that we can move forward on in a financially responsible manner. We feel, and certainly I feel, like there's a cliff coming. MacBooks were ordered across the district, not across the district, but through 9th through 12th grade, and they're incredibly expensive to maintain when they break. And when you have incoming grades that are always plus 20 or 30 from the outgoing grade, you have to add MacBooks to offset those numbers. So we just feel like that platform is not a financially viable and sustainable option for us moving forward. So we really are trying to establish what grades do we feel we should be one-to-one in, and then what should the device be. And that's been the primary. We've had 2 meetings, and that's really what I've been pushing in those meetings. And then we had some people who presented, who did a little bit of research in some of the other districts around about what device they use. And I don't know if it was like, are you happy with that? I can't remember some of the questions that Kara Schwartz asked, but she did a great survey, and Greg put together some information on a tech plan. And so really, again, just trying to bring a device to the finance committee that would be financially responsible and also obviously meet our educational needs in the future. Stephanie, did that kind of cover the survey?
one-to-one, yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. So I was looking back at the minute meeting notes, and you had mentioned that we voted for a Zoom bid, and you wanted approval for a camera, and you also said that you would be posting the videos as they were. And I went and I couldn't find that posted anywhere, and it didn't come in our email. Where can I find that posted?
I don't have them posted yet. Mr. Keith and I talked about that this week, and that was my intent, and I had a personal matter come up at the end of the week, so I apologize I didn't get those posted. But my plan is to post, well, I actually won't be doing the posting, but to direct the IT director to post the videos as is on the website. We would like to embed them into where the kind of similar, I like the way the town does it. The town has minutes video. I believe they're kind of like a side-by-side column, and that's where I would like to post them, and I hope the website will accommodate that. If not, we'll have to create a new link that says video. So don't hold me to the location yet. We'll have to see what the website will allow.
And so when you said Zoom bid, what did you mean by that? Just like, because I think it's like a set price, right?
Yeah, it was given to me by the assistant IT director and was strongly recommended for its ease. I believe it has closed captioning, and so just using some money that we didn't budget to purchase that product so that we can have a better product than what we're currently getting.
So going forward, are they going to be recorded and posted every month now, or?
Yeah, that's the intent.
Any other questions on tech? Spruce?
The Spruce update is that we had a meeting November 10th, which was right after our last meeting here. And at that meeting, we actually received the resignation of Dr. Betsy Webb, who then died later in the month, November 24th, as many of you may know. But Dr. Webb was had a very strong presence as a superintendent in Bangor for many years, but also she was a professor in the leadership department at the University of Maine, and also was in charge of the Spruce as a whole, which is the Southern Penobscot Regional programs. So we actually had to have an emergency meeting this past week, so we had another meeting on December 8th to replace her. So we voted in to temporarily, interim is Christy Babin, who was the current special ed director in the Bangor School Department, so that did happen. And our next meeting won't be until spring. Oh, and I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting, because it's almost 9 o'clock.
Well, how long do you want to extend it?
To include executive session? I thought we had to go in half-hour increments.
No, their policy doesn't limit it.
It doesn't?
No.
Oh, okay.
An hour if we wanted to.
I would say till 10 o'clock, yes.
Okay. Any second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, the motion carries. We all set on Spruce?
Yes.
GH&I, Finance, Curriculum, Transportation, is written. Possible future agenda items, just go around the horn. Shannon?
I'm all set, thank you.
Debbie?
Good, thank you.
Haley?
Yeah, I would like to have a discussion about having us all be part of the policy committee. That's something that we all oversee for our school as a board, and I think it would solve a lot of back and forth if we were all part of that discussion in the subcommittee. It seems to be a lot of unclear.
Okay. Chris? Is that it?
The only thing that I have is the building level protocols that's referenced in the IJJ. Perhaps that's where some of the further definitions could be added. So I just would I don't know at what level that's done at, whether it's the administrators or not, but them to take into consideration the content criteria listed here for elementary and middle school. I don't know.
I think that would be, IJJ would be on the agenda next month too.
So I can
The second reading.
bring that up at that time.
I don't have anything additional.
I don't have anything on the agenda items. I will say we're hoping to have the regular meetings go forward in the room next to the library. We got to figure out a few tech issues in there that we'll have to overcome, but ideally next meeting will be over in that room. Item 9, approval of warrants. I think we can take these all at once.
I move to approve the warrants as listed in item 9.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. This is the motion to go into executive session.
Can you just clarify for me, Chelsea, before we do that, is this the normal timeline, or what's the process for this executive session at this one?
We clarified.
You asked for a motion for the executive session. I'm just trying to clarify the contract extension or whatever this is. I reached out for clarification. Why is this a normal timeline for doing that, and what does that consist of?
Yeah, this is the appropriate time frame annually.
Annually? So it's not based on when he signs?
Right, yes.
I just wanted to speak to that before you guys go into executive session. I know it was explained to my husband by you, Jesse, that this is a formality that has to be looked at, but yet you do not have to extend his contract. His contract is good through 2024, and I'd like you guys to finally listen to the people, because you showed tonight that you are not going to do that again by pushing this policy through of IJJ. We have been doing this with you for a year. This man has divided this town. People in this town are angry at what his actions have produced, which falls back on the board because you guys are in charge of it. And you're responsible. You're ultimately responsible. And if you extend his contract tonight, I'm telling you right now, people in this town are going to get angry. And like she said, there's 5,000 of us and there's 5 of you. So it's time to listen to the people of this town, and we can start to heal and come together and start to create some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion. I know that we need a motion to go into executive session.
I make a motion to go into executive session at 9:04.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries.
We have to vote coming back.
All right, can I get a motion?
Just so everybody knows, I said we returned from executive session at 9:35.
Can you guys speak up, Kristen? I can't hear you yet.
I was talking about the time we returned. I just keeping track of that, so I wanted everyone to know I wrote 9:35 based on my watch. I move to extend the superintendent's contract by 1 year.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. And it is 9:37. We may want to extend the meeting again now.
I can retract my motion unless the executive session was the last one. I can do that another day.
No, that's okay.
I think it's important we do it today.
Yep. But I do think, otherwise we're going to have to come back here in 20 minutes, and these next two may take longer than that. I think we should get a motion to extend this till 10:30.
I'll move.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Well, then no action on the next two, though, correct?
There's no intention to be one, that I know of. Somebody already motioned? No. I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm in favor, sorry. I didn't
Oh,
know.
I'm sorry.
Are you
Go
yes
back
to
and
go into
do
executive session?
Oh, sure. Yep.
Okay.
I don't think Jody had that on.
We return to 9:49. Can I get a motion to enter executive session?
Motion to enter executive session. I just want to clarify, did you specify who the personnel was so they have the opportunity to have an open discussion? You're supposed to notify for executive session if it's personnel related or it says personnel. That's what it was. Move to enter executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A personnel matter at 9:51.
Greg, do you want to?
No, I just couldn't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just got closer, that's
Yeah.
all.
Sorry.
Sorry.
The
No, that's all right.
So, did you make a motion? Okay,
I'll
go to second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I was clarifying if it's about personnel or when you're going into executive session, that person has the right to state whether or not they want it to be an open public forum or if it involves a person.
If it's executive. Yes, it is.
He has the book right there. So I'm saying that if you're going into executive session about a person, if that person has the right to either say, I'd rather have a discussion openly with everybody, or
This is a committee discussion. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Did you hand it though?
I'm in for it.
Motion carries.